How you doing, folks? This is Dr. Jim Gishwin, PhD, and former intelligence analyst in the Pentagon, assistant to the Director of Naval Intelligence, leading chief of Office of Naval Intelligence back in the Reagan days. Okay. Obviously, anything I knew back then is declassified by now. But what I do is I still connect the dots. That's the whole deal with intelligence. It's deductive reasoning, cognitive reasoning. I wish we had more people in the Democratic side that used cognitive reasoning, because right now they're still lying to you. They're lying to all of us, just like the big lie for 5 years when he was running for office, when Jim Clyborne and Obama picked two people that were just shells that they could move around like pawns on a chessboard. Okay? They were both losing in the primaries until the North Carolina one. Okay? And then they decided, well, Joe is so dumb, and Obama already knew he could be handled. He sat there and said, okay, my third term, I'll sit there and put my front man up there, just like I had him before. Okay? He can take the blame for anything that I wasn't willing to do. And Obama's too smart to sit there and push the limit when he was in office. Okay? He knew what the limit was. He sat there, and so now he had someone that could sit there and push his agenda, his communist agenda, and he was raised by a communist grandparent. Okay? You got to remember that. I remember the joke. He sit there and did the Lion King thing when he endorsed, when he talked about when he was born. Oh, what an ego. What an ego. Of course, you got to have an ego to run for any of these offices. Okay? It's a requirement. Or else we wouldn't have anyone running for them. All right, let's talk about the big lies. Okay? They're sitting there lying about everything that they did. They're sitting there lying about how they sit there and got Kamala, whatever, Mrs. Harris, okay, as the candidate backed by everybody in the world, and she's the savior, okay, and they're going to forget everything that she ever did. They're going to forget, and they're going to try and lie to you, and they're already doing it. They said, oh, well, she was never the border czar. This was sitting there, a television announcement by Biden himself when he appointed her the border czar. And she sits there and bragged that she was responsible for the successful, quote, successful evacuation, pullout of in Afghanistan. And you've all remembered the pictures of that. So if she's sitting there claiming that before, and now she disclaims it, apparently she was involved in a lot of this stuff over the past 3.5 years, okay? Because Biden certainly wasn't, and so Obama probably used Harris to sit there and do his bidding, and Joe just got up there and read off the teleprompter whatever they wanted him to read. And you notice in his thing where he quasi-endorsed Miss Harris. Okay, I'm not going to sit there and try and do the Kamala thing. But you notice that he sat there and his eyes didn't blink, man. What kind of drugs was he on? That blank stare straight at the camera, for God's sake. Eyes wide open. Oh, that must have been some good stuff. I've never tried anything like that. No, in my younger days, I was a juicer, not a doper. Anyway, we've all had our faults. We've all had our faults, folks. And if we get smart and outlive them, we leave them behind and look towards the future. And I'm looking towards the future with Donald Trump. This is a changed man. You can tell, but just by his attitude. He's still the junkyard dog to a certain extent. The Queen's junkyard dog. No filter from there to there, okay? Just like the rest of them up there in New York. And, yeah. But let's talk about Kamala. Granddaddy owned 200 slaves in Jamaica. Yeah, you can find them on the internet under Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown's slaves. Because they had to sit there and register them with the government, with the British government who owned Jamaica at the time. As a matter of fact, after the Revolutionary War and after the Civil War, more and more black slave owners moved to the Caribbean. Because before the Civil War, there was 5,000 black slave owners in the nine. I'm sorry, not 5, 9,000 black slave owners, okay, in the United States. And a lot of them went to the Caribbean after the Revolutionary War, at least the ones up north. They were former indentured servants who had earned their freedom, and then they had other indentured servants who became their slaves. That's how that happened, okay? In fact, Benjamin Franklin was an indentured servant in Massachusetts and ran away to the city of brotherly love to get out of that. And they had a warrant for him in Massachusetts if he ever went back to Massachusetts. That's why he didn't spend too much time in Boston. Okay? Let's talk more about Kamala. She sat there and she destroyed a beautiful city, San Francisco. I remember it in my younger days. I was stationed up in Alameda on the Enterprise. And, yeah, it was a lovely town. You weren't stepping on needles and stuff back then. And she sits there and bedded down with a married man. Well, he was separated, so let's give her a break on that, all right? Willie Brown, the most powerful guy in California, was separated. He had all the connections. He could get her all the donations he wanted. And that's why when he was Speaker of the House of Representatives in California. Very powerful job. And then he became mayor of San Francisco, and then she became the city attorney general. And then she became, with his help, state attorney general. And she had this thing of releasing prisoners, just like those Soros-backed prosecutors elsewhere that you've heard about. So she kind of destroyed it, and she had that law where they could go in and not be arrested for taking $900 worth of crap. She called it restitution, reparations for slavery. Well, how does she sit there and get involved with reparations of slavery when her granddaddy was a slave owner? And she's not African American, folks. She's black, yeah, but there's black people all over the world. They're not all African Americans. I tell my students that. I said, look, over here and here and here, you'll have black people. Okay? They're all over the world. All right? They're not just in Africa. And anyway, her parents were communists, Marxists, and they raised her well. They said that she was the most progressive, and then they sit there and took all those old posts down, that she was the most progressive and most liberal person in the Senate. Every race she ran for and won was in the state of California, folks. And when she tried to run for president, she was down at 1%. She was the first one to drop out of the primaries. And then Obama picked her. Well, it was actually Mrs. Obama. Picked her to be with Joe, to handle Joe. She was Joe's handler, so she sat there and covered up the lie for 3.5 years. She also is trying to take down and disavow the fact that she started a fund, which is still active today, and has let people out that have murdered the minute they got out some of the rioters. She called them peaceful demonstrations. You guys remember that. You'd have this reporter from ABC, CBS, NBC, standing there, MSNBC, standing there in front of a burning building and said, mostly peaceful protest. The lies, the lies, the lies, the lies. My God. They're sitting there doing what they did in 1984. George Orwell saying, trying to rewrite history. Remember when they were trying to take down statues? That's what's happened in every communist or socialist government that has taken over. They've sat there and torn down the statues of all their founders or their previous rulers or previous great people. Simon Bolivar, for example, in Argentina and in Venezuela. Venezuela, I think, is where he was born. Anyway, no, that was the other guy. There was two of them that actually freed South America from colonial rule. I can't remember the other guy's name. Anyway, all that aside, they're just going to lie. They're just going to lie, 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 lie. You know, it was such a miracle that suddenly she had all the delegates. Now, who is powerful enough to sit there and get all that crap done? Jim Clyborne, Obama, Barry and Jim. Two powerful people, Democrats in Washington, D.C., ultra-left, Marxist. We have to sit there and fight this Marxist thing. Governor of Florida sat there and passed some laws saying that we must teach civics, we must teach American history, we must teach the Constitution. I do that in my classrooms. Okay? And I think I do it well. And Speaker Johnson was very smart. I noticed that. He said you cannot impeach the president for senility. Okay? For illness. You just can't do that. That's an Article 25 thing. But you can impeach him for bribery and high crimes and misdemeanors. Well, it's not a crime to sit there and get old. So you can't impeach him for that. I feel sorry for him. He's a cardboard cut up. He's an empty shell, just like Harris is. So beware, guys. They're going to sit there and rewrite history. They're doing it. It's 1984 is here. The enemy is in the gates. And I pray for God bless America. God bless America. Pray, folks. We cannot lose this wonderful country. Take care. God bless you, and I remain your humble servant.